Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are tackling the final and honestly probably the most crucial piece of the whole puzzle, compliance culture. Now, you already know the technical foundations from our earlier modules, right? Things like good manufacturing practices, data integrity, risk management, but today we're looking at the invisible force that determines whether any of that technical training actually works. So, let's start with a little mystery. Picture two different manufacturing sites. They have completely identical, perfectly written standard operating procedures. Yet, Site A has frequent product recalls and Site B has almost none. Why? I mean, how can the exact same rules lead to such totally different outcomes? Well, the reality is that an SOP is completely inert. It's really just words on paper until a human being actually chooses to follow it correctly and consistently. And that right there brings us to our answer: quality culture. We define it as the shared values, collective attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors a workforce holds about quality, especially when they are totally unsupervised. It's this invisible force operating right below the surface that actually decides how your procedures get done, and it's carried by every single person in the building, not just the quality assurance department. All right, let's jump right into the agenda. Here is our roadmap for unpacking this today. We'll hit 1, culture versus mere compliance, 2, leadership and the tone, 3, speaking up and just culture, 4, driving continuous improvement, 5, measuring and sustaining culture, and finally, 6, your personal action plan. Let's get started. Starting off with Section 1, culture versus mere compliance. So there is a massive, fundamental difference between genuinely doing things right and simply ticking boxes. Notice the really stark contrast here. Mere compliance on the right is doing things correctly only to survive an audit. It's a workforce that follows rules blindly, lets standards slip the absolute second nobody is watching, and just waits for a manager to point out what's broken. But over on the left, quality culture is about doing it right simply because it's the right thing to do. It's understanding the why behind the rule, you stay consistent when unobserved, and you recognize that quality is owned by everyone. You aren't just trying to dodge audit findings, you're actively self-correcting. Moving on to Section 2, leadership and the tone. You know, culture isn't just something you can announce in a memo. It's architected from the top down. Senior management literally cannot just delegate accountability to quality assurance and wash their hands of it. To truly understand their culture, leaders need to practice what's called Gemba. Gemba basically means the real place. It's about leaders actually learning by observing the work on the floor instead of just sitting in a conference room reading reports. It's going to the line, noticing the little workarounds, and uncovering that very real gap between written SOPs and daily reality. And crucially, it's about asking genuine questions to learn rather than interrogating people, which honestly just drives problems underground. And when leaders do go to the Gemba, they need to show visible commitments. Look at the distinction here of resourcing honestly, meaning they actually provide enough staff and time, and protecting the person who raises a problem. If leaders align their metrics to reward good reporting rather than just rewarding fast output, they prove that compliance is genuinely supported. Because think about it. If you only reward speed, you implicitly teach your staff to hide the problems that slow them down. Next up, Section 3, speaking up and just culture. Here's a scary truth. In an unsafe culture, problems don't just disappear. People just stop reporting them. And that silence is incredibly dangerous. You can see the difference right here between a blame culture and a just culture. In a blame culture, near misses go entirely unreported, lessons sting buried, and punishment feels completely arbitrary. But in a just culture, near misses are actively welcomed. They're treated as free lessons, basically a gift that reveals a system weakness before a patient actually gets hurt. Now, don't mistake a just culture for a free-for-all with zero consequences. Let's break down the gradations of behavior here. For human error, an honest slip, the response is to console the person and fix the broken system. For at-risk behavior, where someone slowly drifts into taking a shortcut, you coach them and remove the incentive to drift. But for reckless behavior, where someone consciously disregards a known risk, fair sanction absolutely applies. The golden rule is to always ask, what would a reasonable, similarly trained peer have done in this exact situation? All right, Section 4, driving continuous improvement. The thing about culture is that if it stops improving, it's quietly starting to decline. You need an engine to keep momentum moving forward, like the PDCA loop right here. Plan, do, check, act. You plan a change, you do it on a small scale, check the results, and then act to adopt or adjust it. What you should really take away from this is that continuous, small-scale improvements consistently outperform occasional, grand, disruptive projects. This loop turns everyday events, like those near misses we just talked about, into lasting institutional knowledge. Which brings us to Section 5, measuring and sustaining culture. So how do we actually read the vital signs of our culture? Because what gets measured gets attention, right? It all comes down to leading versus lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are things that have already gone wrong: recalls, inspection findings, complaints. Leading indicators, on the other hand, predict your health, things like culture surveys, proactive deviations, and near-miss reporting rates. It might sound totally counterintuitive, but a rising near-miss reporting rate is actually a fantastic sign of recovered trust and cultural health. Conversely, if you have 0 deviations reported for a whole quarter, that's not a sign of perfection. That's usually a massive red flag that your team is just terrified to speak up. And that leads perfectly into the 11-month test. True culture is what happens in the 11 months of the year when absolutely no inspector is breathing down your neck. I mean, we've all seen that crazy flurry of panic and cleaning the week before an audit, right? But that's a sign of weakness. To sustain a real culture, it has to be embedded into your everyday systems, like how you onboard your new hires or through routine self-inspections all year round. And finally, Section 6, your personal action plan. Listen, culture isn't just the weather. It isn't something that simply happens to you. It's literally the sum of your daily choices. So let's look at this specific 30-day plan to turn today's explainer into lasting habits. Week 1 is to observe. Just notice where it feels safe to report and where little shortcuts creep in. Week 2 is to model. Flawlessly record your data as you go and raise things early. Week 3 is to influence, and you have immense power here. Speak up once, thank a colleague for a great catch, or take a moment to explain the why behind a rule to a new starter. Finally, Week 4 is to embed. Suggest an improvement and solidify those habits. You have the power to influence your peers simply by setting the standard. So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought. Culture is what you do when no one is watching. Every single honest record, every problem you raise, it nudges the entire system upward. So, focused learners, in those unwatched moments, what will you do today? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Now go out there and build that culture.